Good morning, this is Charles here from the Discovery. Today we are following up with the last 5 points on the presentation I gave in Excel over the weekend in the Property Investor Show. This is 10 ways to lose money. So we've done, so far in the series, we've done introduction, and so we've done the first 5 points around the business perspective. And that's kind of the first half, at least to me, that's the first half of the picture for investing, for becoming successful in the long term. Now we look at the second half of the story, which is this finance perspective. And just to we can wind back to our analogy here. So with finance, essentially what you get is you get this leverage effect, which then is whether you have a positive result or negative result from your business side. Finance will magnify that if you're using leverage, and then there's a cost of finance which will be deducted from your final results. The reason why I think finance is very important is, this analogy here, when you are strapping rockets onto cars and when things goes well, you get the world record. When things goes badly, you get this crash. So this is why finance, essentially it magnifies the volatility from the business. All right, okay. So we're going to look at these 5 perspectives, so 5 possible ways to lose money in finance in the next 5 different series. So today we go through number 1 here. Just quickly let's go through. So this is number 1 is about diversification, and the reason why I put this as number 1 is I think a lot of you out there may have been in the property industry for decades, and so a lot of you are industry veterans. You invest in various different instruments, whether it's bonds, buy and hold, development funding. I came from economics, so in which we use a lot of statistics. So we believe numbers is sort of the hard evidence that trumps any weather situation or any kind of guesstimates of what's effective or not. So if you run mathematical models in people's investment track records, it turns out that the general kind of recognition of the industry, of the investment fund management industry is how to diversify across the high level picture. So your asset allocation actually is a lot more important than which asset do you specifically pick. Because most of the times, we actually focus on finding that asset that works. So finding that high profit asset, finding that project, trying to buy under value. Whereas a lot of people would say actually, based on evidence, it makes sense to focus more on things like asset structuring, diversification of your assets. Because a lot of these, for example, property markets, it's highly market driven, meaning that in a bull market, you can make money in most assets you go into, whereas in a bear market, then the reverse is true. So then in terms of difference between assets, it may be very little between individual assets within the same industry, whereas different industries can behave very differently. So diversification. There's kind of 3 different mental teachers I have, which I want to introduce you on in this case. So we have Howard Marks, so US billionaire managing of hedge funds, specializing in high yield bonds, or some may call junk bonds. And he will say investment success comes down to 3 things. So you have timing. I think what time did you go into the market? Was it 2003, 4, 5, or was it 2007, 8, 9? Also aggressiveness. Okay, so when you go into the market, how much debt did you use? What's the degree of conservatism you employed in your portfolio strategies? And there's the skill. So then there's the skill of fund managers on picking the winners from the losers. The skill of fund manager in terms of enduring the market cycles. Respond to be able to correctly assess where we are today, and to be able to respond to today's market in a logical, in a rational way. So you have this, and what I think sort of off the back of that, what it really means is it's actually very hard to judge our own investment track record. It's very hard to comment on how skillful somebody is. Because the problem is, somebody could make a lot of money, and so somebody can come to you to say, okay, I have a portfolio of 500 flats, and that may be impressive from one perspective. I mean, if you drill down further, he may have purchased all those 500 flats in 2003, 4, 5, where you can have self-declared incomes. Banks were doing more than 100% LTVs on these properties. So with a certain timing and aggressiveness, you don't need skill to have results. But the problem with that is, as Howard Mark would say, the results will be non-replicatable. So if this person is asking for investment now, how do you know that in this market he will kind of deploy your money effectively? He will give you a correct return. In Taleb worlds, in Nassim Taleb's words, it's like there are so many of these lucky idiots in the world who were successful and who may have good intent, but they are not skillful, they may got the results just purely because of timing and aggressiveness. So you have this attribution difficulty. And then in kind of human psychology, we always, when things goes right, we also attribute to our own brilliance, and when things goes wrong, we always push it to the external market, we blame it on somebody else. So you have Howard Marks. I think you have Charlie Munger who say, actually, even if you're good, so assuming you do have skill now, so you're a skilled property investor, or you're a skilled property developer. So Alan's been doing this for 25 years. Then you have a difficulty is once you become skilled, then most people become skilled through specialization, so you're good at one thing. Then you're prone to this man with the hammer syndrome, where if it's a company that just let that one super experienced developer, then you have this difficulty of that developer may be skilled in certain perspectives, which then cause him to overuse his abilities in a lot of areas. So you have this case of developers or investors trying to kind of shoehorn, trying to hammer these things into a shape that they're really good at. However, in reality, markets change, strategies change, so the problem you're trying to solve often changes. So having a single skill that you're really good at may become your disadvantage in certain situations, because then you suffer this, what Munger refers to as a man with a hammer syndrome. So to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail, but in reality, not everything is a nail. So then you have this problem of you're not solving the problem using the best solutions because you're very constrained in your own perspectives. And then you have Warren Buffett at the end, who, so points out correctly, is never risk what you do need for what you don't need. So it's like, what's the downside? So first is, it's like, whether you're doing this yourself or you're doing it with somebody, or you're investing into somebody, how do you know that person is good? So how do you know that he wasn't just lucky, or he was just really aggressive at the right time, right? And assuming he is good, then Munger would say, actually, if a team is, or if an individual is super good at what he does through specialization, then he's going to actually have blind spots, and he's going to may have hidden risks down the road. And then Warren Buffett said, you have all these problems that potentially will impact your investment. The consequences of making investment loss is so severe, especially if you're risking your own capital in a very material way, is that you need to be very careful on what you bet in. All right. So if we take these kind of three different, I look at them as teachers who share with us their investment insights. Then if I apply that on top of property, then what we get is, first is property is an industry with very high degree of uncertainty. Right? So a lot of times the results are externally driven, such as Brexit, such as planning, such as structural problems hitting in the walls or asbestos in the roof. So there are all these surprises that creates problems when you're trying to manage investment. So you may be fully dedicated, so you may be very skilled. However, you're always prone to these external surprises. And then there's this survivorship problem, is where even if no surprise happens, so the project went perfectly well, you're assessing the developer who has a brilliant track record. However, the problem is, how do you know that what he did in the past will also be delivered again in the future? Because the difficulty here is you have this survival bias. Is, like I say, he could be implementing a very aggressive strategy that really depends on luck, right? So if from a skillful perspective, is a poor strategy. It's very high risk. However, he could be lucky. So out of 1,000 developers who are implementing the same strategy, the one you're looking at may have won the last 500 deals because it was just by chance, because there's so many to start with. So you always have that problem to overcome. And then, as Aidan pointed out to me, that Warren Buffett is very famously known for having a very concentrated portfolio. So here we take a simplified analogy on, what if Warren Buffett is in property. So here I have the track record for Berkshire Hathaway. So this is Warren Buffett's company. This is from 1965 to 2016. And so over this 50-year period, we're going to look at the track record. So on average, the U.S. stock market portfolio delivered about 10% of annual growth, compounded growth. And then you have this Warren Buffett's company. If you look at just the market price, then he delivers about double, so 20% per year over that 50-year period. Which is an extraordinary track record. So the question I would ask is, okay, in property, it's very common to use debt, right? So people use leverage. It's kind of one of the secrets or one of the benefits people claim for being in property. Now, what if, just move the camera down a little bit. So the question I ask myself is, what if I apply this Warren Buffett's kind of, this is once in human history type of track record onto the property industry. So if you go through this in detail, and if you want to look at the numbers behind this, you can Google this is Berkshire's performance, and you can find this online. So what happens in that 50 years history? There were 4 times where the market value of his company declined by 20% or more. So if you have if that's a property portfolio, and you have 4 times where the portfolio value declined by 20% or more, and that portfolio, if it's funded on 80% loan to value, then actually the company will be wiped out. So the value of the equity of your portfolio will be wiped out every 10 to 15 years. And it's kind of very regular. It's amazing how frequent that occurs. So what that means is, if you are running a property portfolio, and suppose you're doing a great job, you're getting Warren Buffett's type of reinvestment returns, and this is kind of simplified analogy. Actually, it turns out every 10 or 15 years, you lose the entire value of your portfolio if you're using 80% loan to value. So if you're borrowing for every 1 million you hold, you're borrowing 800,000 from the bank. That's how you're financing your portfolio. Okay. So in practice, most buy and hold strategies will have a lower level of leverage. So on 70% loan to value, then he will be wiped out twice, in 74 and also in 2008. And if you say, okay, I'm super conservative, for every kind of million I have, I only borrow $500,000, so I'm 50% loan to value. And then in that case, he will still be wiped out once. So in 1974, and then at that point, he's only 9 years into his investment. So in that year, he returned a negative 49%. So essentially, imagine in property industry, a lot of people say I've been doing this for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, but actually by year 9, how do you know? And this is even on a very conservative strategy, 50% loan to value, you can still be wiped out. And next, I want to share with you, this is a real life example. So this is somebody I knew who's been in the property industry his entire life, and he was fully committed to this project, and I personally invested into this project. So what this is, this investor acquired 8 flats. So this is a 2 adjacent block that's next to each other. So imagine you have a row of flats, and you have this, so block 1, block 2 next to each other. So there's 4 units on this side, 4 units on that side. Total cost about 4 million, expected GDV 5.5. And then he was looking at, from the moment he started this he actually acquired the 8 units over time. So he was really keen on this. This is going to be his project for the next 2 years. He was really focused on this. So he managed to over time, there's quite a few years, I think over about 10-year period, he bought all these 8 flats. So, and then he did a complete refurb on the 2 blocks. And then so this is total cost 4 million, expected GDV 5.5. Problem was Brexit happened. So this is sort of London market, very close to a central tube station. And then what he was sort of experiencing was the idea with these 8 is you build some, you sell them on, you build the next batch, you sell them on. So you would build and you sell as you build. So you have to churn that portfolio to make the funding, to make the timing work. Because as you can imagine, if you're borrowing much of that 4 million, then the monthly burn rate is very high. So the cost of funding is very high. Problem was Brexit happened, market is slow now, and then because you can't sell as quickly as you imagined, that means you don't have the money to fund the next wave of build as quickly as you imagined, which means project duration gets stretched out, which means you're going to have cost overruns. And it turns out in this case, Senior was very supportive, saying, fine, we're going to extend you, I understand it's Brexit, you're a great developer, you have the track record. Problem is the Mets lender then became very nervous and became aggressive, so he essentially took over the site. So he lost the entire portfolio. And then this is just purely because there's factors outside his control. Right? So and he was very concentrated. So vast majority of his net worth was in this project. He had extraordinary amount of skin in the game, but the problem is, the factors outside. He could live on site. I think he did live on site toward the end. He was doing some of the work himself, so he was doing everything that kind of conceivably can be done onto the site. However, there are these external market conditions that just means you're not in control. So in that case, then to me, the value of diversification really comes through, because if there are these uncertainties in each individual project, it's like how much do you want to fully bet into one. It's great when that works, because it means you essentially bet off a huge chunk of the market, you're punching above your weight. When things work out great, you go home with a handsome profit. But when things don't go out, it's going back to Warren Buffett's phrase, how much, never risk what you do need for what you don't need. Okay, so that's the point on diversification. So tomorrow we're going to cover, next time we're going to cover opportunity cost. Hope you enjoyed that. Bye bye.